Ah yes, the first bright and fun entry in the DCEU. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the third film in the DCEU, DC's 2016 superhero action film, Suicide Squad. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. Suicide Squad stars Will Smith, Margot Robbie, and Joel Kinnaman, and was directed by David Ayer. It tells the story of a group of imprisoned supervillains who are recruited to form a black ops team in exchange for time off their sentences. With the James Gunn standalone sequel on the way, I wanted to take the opportunity to revisit and review this first Suicide Squad movie. The DCEU has had its fair share of controversial and maligned films, and while I think the prize for most controversial goes elsewhere, I would argue that this is probably the most maligned film in the cinematic universe. While I don't think we could claim that any big superhero movie is universally hated, this might be about as close as you could get to that, with the majority of people, critics and general audiences alike, panning it. I will say that the first time I saw this movie, I thought it was okay. Nothing amazing, but okay. However, with each subsequent rewatch, it has crept lower and lower for me. One of the things this movie has going for it is its premise. As is usually the case for me with even slightly deep-cut comic book movies, before this film's announcement, I had never even heard of the Suicide Squad. And as more and more information came out about the film, it became clear to me that I didn't even know who most of the characters were. Basically, Harley Quinn and the Joker were the only ones I was familiar with. But even so, it was a concept that really intrigued me, because it was basically the Dirty Dozen, but with supervillains. So you had these villain characters being forced to work together in a sort of anti-hero capacity. There was so much potential with that concept, but unfortunately, the idea was really squandered here. This is an incredibly messy movie. It's surprisingly choppy, and there's no recognizable structure to it. It's got a lengthy setup and montagey introduction to the large cast as the team is assembled, but then doesn't really have much of a plot. I mean, the team does have a mission, but it's kind of unclear, and for the majority of the movie, they don't do all that much to work towards accomplishing that mission. After that lengthy first act and expositionary introduction, things stall out, and there's really not much progress, plot or character-wise, until we're suddenly rushed into the finale, which is messy in and of itself. The pacing is all off, and it's put together in the strangest way, especially with the abundance of randomly placed Harley flashbacks. It's just weird how little happens in this movie, even with regard to the team. You've got a group of villains, mostly unwillingly thrown together, and yet there's nothing. Very little headbutting among the team, very few attempts at rebelling or doing anything. Just a lot of walking around and talking about what they're gonna do. There's some fun to be had with the team, but it mostly feels very throwaway, and the attempts at redemption within the story just don't feel earned at all. That said, the performances and the characters themselves are okay. Deadshot and Harley are really the only two that have any substance to them, and are the ones that get most of the focus. El Diablo to an extent as well. And so that's kind of frustrating, but not exactly surprising. Underutilization of characters is a very common issue in ensemble films. With a big cast, it's really hard to give any character their deserved attention, and if you do, it's at the expense of another character. And I will say, that is something that the DCEU has really struggled with, both here and with Justice League. Not to start some sort of franchise war here, but the MCU had this ensemble thing figured out. We need to care about the characters, and so the MCU introduced us to the characters in their own films before bringing them together. This gave us time to understand their backstory, get a sense of who they were, and grow to potentially like them before adding the team dynamic. Now, I can understand the appeal of wanting to accomplish that in a more self-contained way and not needing years to set things up, but the way Suicide Squad is structured, we aren't given the opportunity to care about many of the characters, and so we also don't really care about what they're trying to do or what happens to them. So if the Suicide Squad act as the heroes of the story, we've got to talk about the villains. This is another one of the major issues with this film. Now, as with most of the other characters in this movie, I have no experience with Enchantress, so maybe that unduly influences my opinion, but man, was this whole villain thing dumb here. Again, it probably has some basis in the comics, but it was big, sudden CGI escalation that then didn't really lead anywhere. There's this huge threat, which isn't really explained that well, but then it just stalls for a few days with no repercussions. The whole villain side of this just felt half-baked. And speaking of villains, I've obviously got to briefly mention the Joker here too. I'm not going to harp on it because it's a very universal criticism, but this is easily the worst incarnation of the Joker we've had. Which leads me to one of the other big aspects of this film, the style. I understand what they were going for. Prior to this film, the DCEU and other recent DC films had been very dark, tonally and visually. By contrast, Marvel and the MCU were typically bright and colorful. So DC wanted to get in on that, without suddenly changing the style of their core films. And what better in than a movie about villains rather than heroes? And so they loaded this movie with bright neon colors, flashy editing and titles, a stacked soundtrack, and an overabundance of jokes. Unfortunately, it's quite grating. They try way too hard to be cool, and so it comes off feeling disingenuous and juvenile. This movie has a lot of issues, and it's unfortunate because they compound on one another, so it does make it exceptionally easy to dismiss this film. However, it does have its decent elements, and even though it's not a particularly cohesive or cerebrally stimulating experience, it remains a periodically entertaining one. With this premise, there's probably a pretty good story buried somewhere in the mess of this film, one that we'll hopefully be able to see in the sequel. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro here is the premise. And when it comes to a movie like this, I'm not sure it's fair to praise the film so much as the source material, because that's where the concept is derived from. But in either case, I really like the idea of the Suicide Squad. I have a tendency to find villains slightly more interesting than heroes, so seeing a group of villains forced to work together in a kind of anti-hero manner is pretty interesting to me. This film had a decent set of characters, even though it didn't really explore them too much, but it didn't use them, or the idea behind the team, in a particularly interesting way. On the con side, the biggest issue is the script. There are quite a few problems on this front, but in particular, this really encompasses the plot and the structure of the film. For a movie with such an interesting premise that takes so long to introduce and set up its team, it's got an almost non-existent plot. Rewatching it, I was struck by just how little there is to this movie beyond its setup. The mission that this team goes on is almost all talk. There are a few action sequences and a really messy third act, but otherwise, the movie feels like filler. The pacing is way off, and the structure and editing certainly don't do it any favors either, choppily inserting flashbacks at very random times. Even with the additional scenes in the extended cut, it feels incomplete and pretty sloppy. Con number 2 kind of falls under the umbrella of the first, but it's the villain. Comic book movies don't always have the best villains, and we've definitely had some underwhelming ones in the past, and even since this movie was released. But the whole situation with this villain is just as sloppy as the rest of the movie, and doesn't make much sense. Granted, I've never read the Suicide Squad comics, so maybe Enchantress makes a lot more sense to people who already know the character. I sort of understand her powers, and I get that she's pissed off with the whole heart thing, but other than that, it's just flashy CGI nonsense. What is she trying to do exactly? What is this swirling thing she's created? I get that it's some sort of world domination deal, but man is it dull and poorly told. The third con is something that's progressively irritated me more and more with each rewatch, and that's the style. I know that's super vague terminology, but it's just the whole thing. Everything encompassed by the look and feel of this movie. I will say though, I think if this film had come out when I was a preteen, I would have thought it was really cool how flashy and stylistic it is. I don't quite know if that's more an age thing or a year and time period thing for when I was that age, but the style is just grating now. It has some fun moments when introducing a few of the characters, but it's just one of those movies that comes off feeling like it's trying way too hard to be cool. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Suicide Squad or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Suicide Squad 2.5 out of 5 paws. It's a low 2.5 because of the messy script and execution, plus the underwhelming villain, but there's still quite a bit of entertainment to be gleaned from this movie. Some of it intentional, some of it not, but it's a movie I don't mind rewatching, even though I would never actively choose to rewatch it just for my own fun. I would recommend Suicide Squad to people looking for a flashy comic book movie without much substance. I realize that kinda sounds like a dig at the movie, but sometimes you're just in the mood for visual stimulation, or want something to put on in the background that doesn't really require your full attention. If you liked Suicide Squad, I would recommend Birds of Prey. It's another flashy, colorful DCEU team-up movie featuring Harley Quinn, but does just about everything better. The style feels much more in line with the characters and plot, and things are quite a bit more coherent this time around. If you like the idea of the Suicide Squad and the thought process behind their formation, the whole what if the next Superman isn't on our side thing, then you might like Brightburn. It's a superhero horror film that's basically about a young Superman-like character who's not on our side. And if you liked Will Smith as Deadshot and want to see him in another comedic superhero movie, you should check out Hancock. He plays a Superman-like vigilante who just doesn't care and has public image issues. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Suicide Squad? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, who's your favorite DC villain? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.